I wonder if, like me, left to your own devices you spend way too long on world building. You know you should draw the line somewhere because life's too short and preparation heavy sessions have the burden of too much expectation on them. From your end as the DM at least. 7 years ago I was stuck in that more the merrier mindset. This is what my planning looked like. That was for one 2 to 3 hour session. It won't surprise you that the campaign it was part of lasted only 7 sessions before it exhausted me and the game ground to a halt. And that's daft because homebrew is supposed to free us from heavy preparation. I associate that sort of unwanted work with reading and to some extent memorising published modules. For the likes of you and me, we already have a great mentor in Sly Flourish who gave us the Bible, The Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, a mercifully brief book based on surveys of many dungeon masters that frees you to make great sessions from mercifully brief preparation. I've covered Sly's ultra stripped down approach to world building in another video. The 6 truths are a set of 6 sentences which you present to both yourselves and your players. They're either your ideas or, and now is a good time to throw away any squeamishness you have about doing this, reskinned ideas from other works. I've learned a lot running the 7 homebrew campaigns I have under my belt. I was lucky enough to have found and read Sly's book before starting my current campaign 4 years ago. The game has really benefited from the 6 truths approach, but in this video I'm going to pull apart what I wrote to get the campaign going back in 2018. My goal is to help you streamline your campaign prep so it's both lethal quick and lethal effective, or just steal those ideas you like and leave those you don't. I would. In 2018 I started with this map, which I randomly generated in fractal terrains. I don't think that's the best tool for the job now, but it did the job of smashing out something fast which was at least presentable. It's worth repeating that over preparation is a real danger. I chose this island in the top right of the map because it's small and sandwiched between 2 threatening landmasses. Perfect for a plucky band of adventurers looking to overcome looming evil despite overwhelming odds. I avoid ponderous fantasy names if possible and wanted to impart the little island with some sense of value, and boom, the Trove Islands were born. By now the map was already speaking to me and gave me the first of this campaign's 6 truths. The Drow have exiled the Dryder to the north of the Trove Islands and have used that to stake a claim on the land. The latitude of this region will make it cold and dark, which suits the Drow. I can't remember where I got the idea, but I like the thought of the Dark Elves trying to modernise their image so that they're no longer seen as cruel and underhand on the world stage. Out of that came the main point of this first truth, that they've booted the Dryder out, the horrifying fate of failures in Drow society, because the practice of Dryderification, real word, is seen as barbaric. It's not a real word. We simply don't do that sort of thing anymore. Drow with a Russian accent in my campaign. Thanks Vlad for associating that with villainy again. However, the tricksy Dark Elves haven't really changed their ways, and in exiling the Dryder to the north of the Trove Islands, they are using the creature's presence there to stake a claim on that patch of land. This truth works because it arose organically from the map, provides immediate conflict between the Drow and the native Trove Islanders, and shows off their manipulative character really well. I give my 2018 self a solid pass and wouldn't change this truth or the way it's written now. The Orcs and Hobgoblins are locked in endless war on the Kriegsring. Raiding parties from both search for loot to fuel the war effort. I'd watched the first episode of Godless, which was okay. Despite not continuing with the series, I liked the plot enough to make a short summary of it in my story seed list. A band of raiders wanders from mine to mine, pillaging all they can. A mining town, knowing it's next, plans to survive the impending attack. I wanted to do Hobgoblins. I like the whole martial discipline thing they have going on in 5th edition D&D. So I ditched the raiders mentioned in the story seed in favour of an invading army, and voila, there's another pressure/conflict for the players to deal with. The big landmass to the south of the players' starting island looked like a good place to base the bulk of the Hobgoblin Empire and explain why they've turned up on the players' home territory. However, the lower landmass is huge, so if it was dominated only by the Hobgoblins, why haven't they conquered the tiny Trove Islands already? They needed an adversary that kept them in check, so I decided the chaotic Orcs were the perfect foil. Endless wars between the two stops either from getting the upper hand. The new landmass needed a name. It looked like the land circling the mountain range. A ring, if you will, would be where most creatures lived, and we already know it's plagued by endless war. The German word for war is Krieg, and so the Kriegsring was born. This is also a good truth, so I'm giving this a pass too. It's not quite as good as the Drow one, which immediately brings the scheming character of the Dark Elves into play. I could add detail to the Hobgoblin truth by changing it to this. Towns on the south of the Trove Islands are worried that invading hobgoblins will impose brutal martial law if an invasion is successful, to force the inhabitants to provide supplies for the hobgoblins' war effort versus the Orcs on the Kriegsring across the sea. This version shows where the threat is coming from, and the mention of brutal martial law hints at the character of the hobgoblins and what the players can expect. Much better. Next truth. Giles Cartness has recently died, leaving the mayorship in Port Sovereign open for election. I really like this idea because behind it was a reskin of the plot of Ready Player One, which you should definitely read if you haven't already. The film does not do it justice, although the audiobook, which is read by Will Wheaton, definitely does. Anyway, the idea of a will, in which vast fortunes and power are promised to anyone who can solve a series of riddles was a great primary hook for the players, a goal for them to strive towards. Once they'd attained it, it could have been turned against the evil forces ganging up against the Trove Islands. In Ready Player One, the competition for the prize was available to anyone, including the bad guys. If I'd played this truth properly, there could have been endless opportunities to go up against rival parties who were also trying to solve the riddle, or steal the answers from more successful opponents, or for me to drip feed clues with each passing session. The storylines write themselves. Where I went wrong is getting seduced mid-campaign by a competing plotline based on the classic 1980s Dungeons & Dragons cartoon, which went on to eclipse the puzzle arc. This new idea should have gone into my list of story seeds and been saved for a future campaign. My main failure was from then on to offer 2 overriding hooks or prizes rather than 1 for the party to aim at. If I had the chance to come at this again, it's obvious that I should have stuck with the riddles equals vast fortunes plot. Although I tied the truth to a geographic location, the main city on the Trove Islands, it's strange that I didn't mention the riddles in the associated truth shown to the players. I give the idea, and not my awful implementation of it, the shakiest past so far. So let's fix that. Giles Cartness has recently died, and besides leaving the mayorship in Port Sovereign open for election, there are rumours that his vast fortunes and estates could be won by anyone who can solve the challenges left in his will. Better. The word challenges is more ambiguous than puzzles or riddles, so a DM could string out the air of mystery around what's in the will for a bit until the players get themselves involved in that. Next! Demon and devil worship are on the rise as the integrity of the Church's Inquisition is weakened. Is the Arcane Academy involved? On the face of it, this looks fairly strong. There's the threat of hellish fiends for a start. Several of the campaign's early players, one of whom was the DM who got me back into D&D as an adult, knew their lore well enough to be primed for conflict between the devils and the demons by this truth. See the Blood War for details. However, I'm failing this truth. Why? Well, for a start, there's no link, no anchorage to the map. Where is the church based? What Arcane Academy? The main city on the Trove Islands is Port Sovereign, sovereign being a synonym for capital. A player might assume, correctly as it happens, from the truth, that the church and the academy are based there, but it's a bit of a leap. This was the perfect time to spiral out from the tiny bit of information I had about Port Sovereign already, simply put where it was on the map of the islands. An adequate map of the city itself could have spoken to me and told me where to place the things needed for the devil and demon truth. Waterboo's amazing medieval fantasy city generator could have provided a quick and easy solution. The Citadel region is going to tell you where the high status part of the town is, so that's where the Church and Arcane Academy are going to be based. Where are the demons and devils going to be cropping up? Near the magic meddling academy, or maybe in the tightly packed slums where people are less happy and the town watch fear to go. My point is that the map is speaking to us and giving these ideas a sense of home. Beyond what's needed for the ideas in the truth, leave the city map blank. The players have enough to think about, and you don't want to spend any more time preparing than you have to. Although, and this is cool, you can integrate the city you built in Waterboo's into Azagar's map generator. There's a rabbit hole you could lose yourself in. Shall we move on to the next truth? There is tension between the old world and new, as infrastructure is built to support the mining boom to the north. Oh, yawn. Infrastructure. I'm tempted to fail it just for that. Who plays D&D to talk about road building? It gets one thing right in that it refers to the map, the north bit, and it implies conflict. But other than that, this truth is going to need a lot of work. This truth was based on a dream I had. A literal dream, not a dream. Anyway, I summarised this dream, which I called the Blue Stain, as briefly as I could and added it to my list of story seeds. So far so good. Fair enough, I wanted to use the idea in game, but where I went very wrong was to dedicate an entire truth to it. The Blue Stain was something that could be dealt with permanently at the lowest of character levels. Not good material for a long-term feature of the game's world. Some minds become relevant in the last truth I'm going to tackle here, but suffice to say the Blue Stain was going to be something fey creatures, like dryads, had summoned in response to all the building and development that was going on as the result of the mine works. With hindsight, I would scrap this truth and use a seed suited to supporting a long-form campaign. I didn't want to do Fey stuff beyond the blue stain idea. I'm not very good at it. I'm a bit too... if you know what I mean. But just for fun, let's see if we can take the idea and fix it. Say for a DM who wanted to take the Fey angle and run with it. This truth could have been saved by delving more into who is involved in the conflict. The broken truth mentions a mining boom, so that means at least one mining company is involved. They're potentially rich and ambitious. Maybe they're based in Port Sovereign, so that's a chance to let our map tell us where their offices are to be found. Will they need access to the sea to get imports in and out? If so, they're likely near the docks, so they can more easily export to foreign markets and meet new personnel arriving from abroad to work in their mines. We already know a bit about the city, having used the map to tell us where the church, the arcane academy, and the devil and demon worship is happening. We can cross the streams of this and other truths to make unique and interesting encounters. Is the mining company noticing strange behaviour amongst its hired workers as the result of occult activity, for example? Another rich source of ideas. However, let's stay focused on fixing the truth. It was the Dryads who summoned the blue stain, but if we wanted to go long term with this truth, we need to know more about them. Why are the Dryads here? Are they native? Is there a portal to the Feywild? I picture Fey creatures being drawn to lush woodland areas, so that rules out the mountains and the coastline. Also, we know they're interfering with the industrial activity between Port Sovereign and the mining development to the north, so that puts the Dryads about here. Yeah, that would do. So let's rework the utterly broken original truth. The Argus Drift, just came up with that, mining corporation in Port Sovereign is taking on overseas workers as it expands its operations on the north of the island. But these works are frustrated by the interference of the Fey creatures which have lived in harmony with nature for millennia in that region. A bit wordy, but much better, especially as our map of Port Sovereign is now more developed. Top tip before the final truth, fantasy name generators is a great resource for quickly naming things. There's even a subsection for naming mines. Rumours are coming back from the north that the promise of adamantium deposits are not leading to anything. The idea behind this one was pretty good. At some point there was to be a reveal that the Drow had stooges in the city who lied about precious metal deposits deep underground. Those reliably greedy humans who listened dug great big tunnels underground looking for the ore, completely unaware that they were building the perfect habitat for the Drow. By the time the humans worked out that they had been played, they had already given the Dark Elves everything they needed for their forward base. However, as something to present to the players, it's not very good. It's not as bad as the last truth, but I'm going to fail this one too. It hints at some sort of problem which might be interesting, although the wording doesn't exactly guarantee it, but it doesn't suggest how to tackle it. Also in D&D it's adamantine, not adamantium, but whatever. I'm going to try and fix this truth by merging it with a repaired version of the last truth because the two are related. The Argus Drift Mining Company offices in Port Sovereign has two problems. Not only does its mine works on the north of the island upset a local Fey domain, which has coexisted there harmoniously with nature for thousands of years, but reports are coming back from the pits that nothing can be found of the promised abundance of adamantine ore. Bit of a wordy sentence, but a much better truth. This is the second video in the Anatomy of a Session series, the first being here, and the next video will look at some nice tips and tricks of the sort that will be useful to you in the first few sessions of your homebrew campaign. Although to be honest, they're useful at any point. If you're interested in a video story series based on the 6 truths we fixed here today, you might want to check out the Calathephorae series, which you can find here.